welcome to this video. I'm MCFPapa, and today I'm gonna be giving my thoughts on Ravenhearst Unlocked. I did a similar video for Key to Ravenhearst, though in the Key to Ravenhearst video I focused my complaints on specifically Gwendolyn and Charlotte, but in this Ravenhearst Unlocked, I'm just gonna be basically complaining about the whole game. Now, first of all, the game begins, and for the first act, you're in the asylum, and then you're in the burnt-out remains of the rebuilt Ravenhearst, which was built on the burnt-out remains of the original Ravenhearst. And for this, whole first section of the game, it's just like, hey, remember when this happened? Remember when this happened? Remember the puzzle you did to open Abigail Dalimar's door in Escape from Ravenhearst? Well, here it is again, slightly different, but the same exact concept. Remember when you were just here in the previous game? And it's just so weird. First of all, with the ending of Key to Ravenhearst, there wasn't really much of any indication that it was a cliffhanger and there would be another Ravenhearst game a month later. Sure, Alistair grabbed the shard of the Ball of Fate or whatever, which, by the way, in Key to Ravenhearst, it's never explained how Alistair Dalimar got his hands on the Ball of Fate. I thought he was defeated and destroyed in Fate's Carnival and didn't manage to retrieve the ball. But it is what it is. And so for this first section of the game, it's continuing right from where Key to Ravenhearst left off, and they're really the only hints to Ravenhearst Unlocked really in Key to Ravenhearst is when you're at the lighthouse and you're shining the beam shines on the ghost town for a brief moment. And also, I think Professor R.A. Yeller in one of his writings references it. But it's just not really substantial enough to warrant, oh, let's have another game right away, picking up right where the last one left off. And, just being in the Blackpool Sanitarium again when people were just there in the collector's edition of Key to Ravenhearst for the bonus game. It's why? And again, it's just, hey, remember in Escape from Ravenhearst when you're in the asylum? Well, here it is again. And they don't even get the rooms in the asylum quite right. What was the common area in Escape from Ravenhearst is the security room in Key to Ravenhearst and Ravenhearst Unlocked. Now maybe the actual asylum moves stuff around in the years since Charles was actually there and visited, but with how meticulous Charles's whole plan was in Escape from Ravenhearst, you'd think he'd get the designs of the asylum perfectly correct. So, this first section, it's still more of a traditional Mystery Case Files type, ooh, spooky area, explore around it. And then, you get the whole stupid medieval town comes up and appears, and then for the majority of the game, you're in this medieval town. And the people in the medieval town aren't really ghosts, they were just trapped for like 500 plus years and are finally restored. But it's just such a weird thing for a Mystery Case Files game, which, yes, there have been supernatural elements, but even still they were rooted in reality more than just having a giant medieval town buried and then surfaced. And they could have done a lot more with the medieval town concept. The biggest really impact is like the one mine, which was underwater, but now that the town's above water, the mine's on ground, and that blows up and blocks your path. But they could have done a lot more, like they had a few like ships and submarines and plane wreckages, but they could have had like a whole Bermuda Triangle type stuff where you explore instead of just one wrecked ship like you did in Key to Ravenhearst, explore like a whole ship graveyard, kind of like what people saw in Uncharted 3. Like, that section was amazing in that game. So why not do that, but with a point-and-click adventure? But, like, the most out of the ordinary, like, yes, it was unrealistic for Charles to build, like, this whole elaborate complex underground, but with the power of time travel, he, like, had a century or more to work on it and build the whole thing. And Phineas Crown had, like, his pirate ships, but at least that makes more sense because, like, it was only a handful of ships that you explored. It wasn't a whole giant town. And apparently, in the Middle Ages, like, the Lord's castle or whatever just happens to look eerily similar to the modern Ravenhearst Manor, when the modern Ravenhearst Manor was just based off of a real, like, house or whatever, and they just digitized that and made it look spooky for the exterior shot in the original Ravenhearst. So, Alistair, like, has this whole town. Like, I guess you could say this is, like, the game's jumping the shark moment, if I'm using that term correctly. But then, first of all, that Lord Ravenhearst was, like, Alistair Dalimar's sworn enemy and stuff. Like, okay, so is it just pure coincidence that Charles just happened to fall in love and be smitten with Emma Ravenhearst, who was, like, his aunt, the descendant of his father's, like, mortal enemy? I don't get it. I guess it's possible they could be, but it's still just stupid. Like, Emma was just some random poor girl that Charles's insane fixation focused on and ended up killing her. It wasn't part of, like, some elaborate scheme to do his father's bidding and, like, also just happened to work out that it was also his target of influence. And also, Alistair Dalimar being, like, 500 plus years old. Okay. Why? Because in the bonus game, where he's, like, young in the medieval town in 1495 or whenever, he still looks old with his gray hair, which directly contradicts Fate's Carnival, which depicted him as a younger man with, like, black hair. So, which is it? It doesn't make much sense. But, for me, the biggest stupid thing in this game is there being 500 plus years ago a master detective. Why? Like, the whole master detective thing was established in Huntsville as, oh, you're in this Mystery Case Files detective agency and you're just rising up through the ranks, and if you're incredibly good, then you get to be a master detective. It wasn't like an organization of master detectives, it was just a detective agency that just happened to have that as its top requirement. And I also really don't like, in the Epic's games, the whole retcon, like, oh, the Queen is like, the MCF agency is actually, like, a whole British, like, spy agency and established by the Queen herself and run by the Queen herself. And by the way, I hate the stupid old woman voice they get for, like, the intro to the Epic's games. I'm sure the real Queen Elizabeth is super nice, and I'm sure her voice doesn't sound nearly as old biddy-ish as the voice they got for this game. Come to think of it, I've actually never heard Queen Elizabeth's voice. And also, in the 1495 or whenever, like, even back then, the MCF agency is, like, headed up by the Queen. So what happened when there was a king of England? Did they just not have an MCF agency for, like, several centuries until the next Queen came along? Or did the Queen Regent, like, take over and handle it? I don't know. Did the king handle it? I don't know. And then, like, the end of the game, like, the stupid old master detective lady is trying to sacrifice herself, and she, like, possesses Thanatos and turns the bird white, which is just so weird and out of place. Like, okay, what happened to Thanatos' soul? Is he, like, gone forever now? Or what? Because that was the issue with, like, Fate's Carnival and Dire Grove Sacred Grove, is, oh, you defeated Alistair, but oh, Thanatos is still out there. I guess they had to explain somehow how, like, Thanatos stopped being around. But it's just so stupid. And then, like, she says, case closed, Master Detective. And then, like, it's supposed to be a big, sappy moment where you're, like, so heartbroken about her sacrifice or something. And I just don't care. Like, maybe I'm too heartless. Maybe I've just been desensitized and can't show emotion. I don't know. But I just thought the ending was so dumb. But the one good thing I will say about the ending is it means that Ravenhearst is pretty much done. Because Alistair Dalimar is now dead and gone for good, thank God. So there really isn't much they could do to bring him back or continue the Ravenhearst story. They have done some things, like having Rewind be Victor's story, but that isn't like the Victor from Escape from Ravenhearst. That's like supposed to be the Victor from Return to Ravenhearst, who, like, traveled back in time using the time machine. And they also did a bit in Crossfade where they brought back Charles. But that's pretty much it. So, at least with this ending, like, they really can't do much anything to ruin the Ravenhearst lore anymore. But, boy, they did enough in these 2 games to just crap on it all. And this game didn't even really... It ruined the Ravenhearst lore a bit more with, like, the whole stupid, like, Emma Ravenhearst's ancestor or whatever. But it more just, like, just was a slap in the face to the whole series with how, like, ridiculous it was even for Mystery Case Files. And it's just such a weird shift in tone. Like, the first part of the game, oh, it's standard Mystery Case Files fare, and then, oh, let's just have a medieval town adventure. I don't know what they were thinking. And to top it off, like, at least with Key to Ravenhearst, I could see that they were trying. Like, graphically it looked pretty good. But with Ravenhearst Unlocked, it's like they probably spent much less time on it, because the graphics look significantly worse, at least in my eyes, compared to Key to Ravenhearst. The effects don't look as good, like the 3D effects when there are any. And they don't even bother to have any morphing objects in the hidden object scenes. I mean, it was pointless in Key to Ravenhearst because it didn't unlock anything. But why didn't they have them? I don't know. In my eyes, Ravenhearst is a trilogy and nothing more. 'Cause, ugh. Oh, by the way, they killed off one of the twins. I don't even remember which one, but... So I guess they could follow up with the living twin wanting revenge, but they haven't. I don't know why not. Unceremoniously kill off one of the twins anyway. I guess since they got you to hate him in Key to Ravenhearst, they figured, whatever. Their characters are already destroyed. Why not just kill one of them off? Who cares? Ugh. And I haven't replayed the other Epics ones, but I'm not looking forward to playing those. Maybe it would have been better if after Dire Grove, Sacred Grove, or hell, even after Shadow Lake, if the series just unceremoniously ended and no other Mystery Case Files games came out. Because, like, if they aren't gonna bother making them good, why even bother making them? And I'm sure the developers at Epics are wonderful, wonderful people. But a series like Mystery Case Files definitely deserves more respect and effort put in to the games. And there were barely any ghosts in either of these games, or anything even really remotely scary. Like, there weren't even really any jump scares, really. And the setting wasn't really that scary. So, what's up with that? 'Cause Return to Ravenhearst wasn't really scary. It was more eerie and unsettling. Especially with the implications of rape and like torture and stuff for a century, basically, that Rose and the twins endured. Like, that's pretty messed up. And Escape from Ravenhearst, that game was scary. Just for, like, the stuff it puts you through. The scariest part of that was doing the household chores for Abigail. But Key to Ravenhearst and Ravenhearst Unlocked, not really scary. Not even like any ghosts around. Just a waste in my eyes. Because a Ravenhearst sequel would have been pretty easy to do even without Charles. Just have like some fanatical fan like who studied the newspapers and studied like Charles and that, just have them be like a copycat wanting to rebuild Ravenhearst and do it. Don't do the stupid like possessed Benedict or whatever, possessed by like the Alistair Dalimar's dark influence. Like, just have it be some fanatical fan who is just rebuilding Ravenhearst and then accidentally winds up like releasing the spirit of Alistair again or something. I don't know. That's something I just come up with on the spot right here. Have maybe a team up with the Gwendolyn and Charlotte and Rose and Emma and do something like that. Don't make Gwendolyn and Charlotte evil. Don't, like, just forget Rose and Emma even exist and just try to be decent. Because, yeah, Fate's Carnival's story doesn't make much sense, because it kind of makes Madame Fate's story, like, not true, because all the carnies died in Madame Fate, but they're alive in Fate's Carnival. Dire Grove was better at just basically having nothing to do with the original Dire Grove and just being its own story set in that location. So maybe they should have just done something like that, where it's a completely different, like, paranormal related occurrence happening like at the cottage and the burnt out ruins of Ravenhearst and the lighthouse, and just like some new people move in and are spooked by it. And it doesn't really have anything to do with Charles and that, but just leave it at that. Oh, by the way, what sense does it make for Alistair to be a patient in the, like, sanitarium when he's like 500 years old? Why would he be a patient? I don't know. The game doesn't really explain it. And if Alistair had immortality, why couldn't he use it to make himself like eternally young instead of being like an old guy? And if Alistair was 500 years old, then why did he end up being a Mistwalker in Dire Grove? I don't know. Just stupid. The one thing I'll say about Ravenhearst Unlocked is I at least liked the Pac-Man clone. That was pretty fun to do. Anyway, like and subscribe if you want. I'll see you in whatever I post next. Ugh. Again, don't play Ravenhearst Unlocked, please. Play one of the other Mystery Case Files games that are actually good.